Hello and welcome to the Turnkey Trader tutorial series. In this lesson, we're going to show you how to identify the trend trade. Much like the name implies, this will be a trade we look for when the market is already in an established trend. So first, we're going to take a look at a long example. And before we run through the rules, I want to point out that our trade isn't going to be qualified until it touches this orange trigger line. In fact, all of our trade setups must cross this orange trigger line in some way or another. So I know even if I have a tail start to form on my bar, if it doesn't come down and touch the orange trigger line, I know it won't be a qualified trade. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and run through our rules. First, I want to make sure that my background is green, which it currently is. I want to see my 200 EMA plotting green, showing me that it is rising, confirming the trend. My middle panel here, my turnkey bracket panel, also needs to be green. And also needs to be without a black dot. So these black dots will immediately disqualify any trend trade. Next, I need to see my histogram rising, or I need to see it plot green as well. This will let me know that it is higher than the previous value. And you'll see it fluctuate as the price moves up and down. This indicator does update live. And I also need to see my histogram above 60 and below 120. Between 60 and 100 is a really good sweet spot for that particular setup, but anywhere between 60 and 120 is acceptable. So once I have all of these rules qualified, I can go ahead and put in my order at the green DPI. So at this point, I have the majority of my rules qualified, and I'm just waiting for my bar to come down and cross my orange trigger line, and for the bar to plot gold, which I see that it currently is. So if this bar closes in whichever direction, it will be a gold bar. Let's fast forward a bit and see how this trade develops. All right, so now I see that my bar has crossed the orange trigger line. So now I can go ahead and put in my order at 5696.25. So I have it at the current green DPI price, and if the market reverses, I can simply cancel my order and wait for the next qualified trade. Now, something I do want to point out as we run through the rules one more time. So again, I'm looking for a gold bar, my green background, my 200 EMA plotting green, a green bracket, my histogram to be between 60 and 120, but this histogram also needs to be rising, or it needs to be greater than the previous value. Now, if it's the same exact value, we can still enter this trade, but typically we like to see it higher than the previous value. As we can see, since this indicator updates live, as the price moves up, we'll see our histogram move up as well. So we do have quite a bit of distance before we reach the green DPI. So I can assume that my histogram will get to the level needed to fully qualify this trade. If we're unsure at any point, or we don't see it turn green before the bar closes, we can wait and attempt a retracement entry, but you will typically see it flash green once it gets to that price, and usually before the bar closes. But again, if we don't, we can always attempt a retracement. So now let's jump forward a bit again and see if this trade fills and how it works out for us. All right, so the trade did get filled and my first profit target was hit. In this particular money management strategy, I'm looking for a secondary profit, which the market just took off and filled that. So as we can see, a very clear textbook example of a trend trade, which took off pretty soon after. So I always attempt to qualify these as far ahead of time as possible, as you will often see that once the trade fills or hits our entry price, they do tend to take off. So we aren't always able to get a retracement, but this does get easier with practice. Next, let's take a look at a trend trade short example. Now let's take a look at our trend short. So much like the long version, the rules are simply reversed. So I do need to see my gold bar form, which likely won't happen until it gets further up and crosses my orange trigger line, if that does happen. I also need to see my red background, which I have here. I need to see my 200 EMA plotting red, a red bracket in my middle panel, and that it has no black square. And we have a way to give us a heads up if a black square will plot in this middle panel. If we take a look at our signal indicator, we see there's a small border here before we get to the green DPI. Now, if the bar passes this border for our green box here, That will indicate to us that a black dot will plot in the middle panel and will immediately disqualify our trade. So if the body of the bar exceeds the border of our signal indicator here, that disqualifies our trend trade. I also need to see my direction histogram lower than the previous value or to see this plot red. And I also need to see it be between 60 and 120. Which it currently is. It looks like the previous value was -87. So it needs to be between -60 and -120. So now I see the bar has almost touched my trigger line. There we go. And it is now plotted as a gold bar. So at this point, this trade is almost completely qualified. The last thing I need to check for is to make sure this direction histogram will indeed plot red. We do have quite a bit of ways, so I'm anticipating that we'll pull this down below the previous value around the same time this bar closes. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my order at 1752.8. And then we'll fast forward a bit to see how this trade develops. All right, so my order was filled. Looks like my first profit target was hit. All right, and I have my text plot on the screen confirming this was indeed a trend short. Now, if you're interested in the money management strategy we use in this video, we do have a separate video outlining the ATM strategy we use here, as well as several other variations. We hope you've enjoyed this lesson and can take what you've learned to start spotting trend trades with Turnkey Trader.